Oh my gosh, the toxic fandom excuse has a precedent. Here's George Lucas in 1999. Let's go. Oh, I hate to do this. Welcome to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Ethan Van Sciver, 25-year veteran of the comic book industry. I am the creator of Cyberfrog. You can get a copy of Cyberfrog Blood Honey, my new comic book, in the description below. There's a link. Also, I am the illustrator of Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and a great big Star Wars fan. It breaks my heart, George. You're breaking my heart. You're breaking my heart. Well, look, this is a 1-minute clip that has surfaced. It's 1 minute and 2 seconds BBC interview of George Lucas back right around the time I guess when The Phantom Menace came out. Okay, and people were reacting to it, and they were reacting poorly to it. And what we see here is a very strange phenomenon that seems to occur mostly with Star Wars. And I don't know if it's tied to a certain arrogance or denial. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but this idea that a creative person creates something that does not click with the fans. In fact, it actually actively irritates the fan base. It actually irritates normal people, the fans, who respond. And they can respond a bunch of different ways. They can be angry about it. They can make fun of it, or they could just continue to take the constant piss out of it. Like they did with Jar Jar Binks in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Everyone hated Jar Jar Binks. I hated Jar Jar Binks. He was a nuisance. He really ruined the film. He disrupted the flow. Every time he was on the screen, he tried to be funny, and he wasn't funny. Jar Jar Binks was there to be funny, and he was never funny. He wasn't likable. He wasn't funny. He wasn't amusing. George, I know perhaps you meant him to be. It's possible, George, that you're not funny, and that is something that you're going to have to come to terms with. But on the other hand, you don't need to lie. You don't need to actually directly lie. In this interview here, and I took notes. I'm gonna leave the link below in the description as well, so you can go check it out and just make sure that I didn't do violence to anybody's word, tone, meaning, context. But the woman who was interviewing George Lucas here said the characterizations in your films are rather definite. And where did Jar Jar come from? Now, I almost feel like she's using euphemisms there. George routinely borrows from ethnic stereotypes in his films. And he does it, with great abandon. He does it often. Of course, you have C-3PO and R2-D2 who are British gentlemen. I guess R2-D2 isn't, but C-3PO is definitely a British gentleman. He's like a butler. That is kind of who he is. He's a little bit fey. But even at the beginning, the very first scene of Phantom Menace, we meet a bunch of fish-faced fellows who are referred to in the opening title crawl as the greedy members of the greedy Trade Federation. And if those fish-faced fellows aren't Asian, aren't possibly Chinese stereotypes, I don't know what else could they be. They are obviously, very definitely ethnic stereotypes. They are. Now, that's okay. George tends to do this over and over again. He will. He kind of runs out of ideas for the way aliens speak, the way they talk, so he borrows from kind of Earth accents. He certainly did that with Jar Jar Binks. So here he's called out on it in a way by this woman. She's very gentle about it, and he immediately goes into defensive mode. And he just says, look, the movie is neutral. This is outer space. There are aliens in outer space. And he says the idea, so he already knows what she's talking about, what she's referring to. He says the idea that an orange amphibian could possibly be Jamaican, and that his ears are dreadlocks. He says that is a strange stretch. That is, quote, completely absurd. George, why you always lying? Why you always lying? Dude, George, Jar Jar Binks most certainly was a Jamaican stereotype. His accent was Jamaican, and I don't know about his style. It never occurred to me that his ears were meant to sort of resemble in silhouette dreadlocks, but yeah, that does kind of make sense to me, and it just kind of makes me understand further the way your mind works inside your head there. That's none of this is bad, George. You could just step up and just accept that. You could just go, yeah, you know what? I wanted to make him a character with an accent that people could kind of relate to. You kind of know where he's from, what he's about. So yeah, I gave him kind of a Jamaican accent. Or the actor who played him had a very Jamaican accent, kept it in, thought it sounded great, thought it was funny. It added to the comic value, and so that's what I did. Instead, what George Lucas does is he turns that up. First he denies it, and then in this interview he turns around and he blames the fans. He said that idea came out of a group of fans of the film that don't like comic sidekicks. So basically he has made this leap from the idea that he has kind of borrowed some cultural appropriation, as it might be called these days, and added some unflattering stereotypes to his movies. He is sidestepping that, and instead he's going to blame the people who notice this, his fans, and then completely make it about something else. Now listen, the quote-unquote greedy Asian Trade Federation that I pointed out earlier, they're not comic sidekicks. There's nothing intentionally funny about them, I hope. I hope they weren't being played for laughs. But they did exist. They were there. It was clear as day, George. I'm sorry. It was quite obvious that those characters were meant to be Asian stereotypes. So those were not comic sidekicks. Jar Jar Binks probably was meant to be a comic sidekick. He says these guys want the films tough, like the Terminator. They want guy movies. No. No, not really. No, we want them to have comic relief. All of the characters in the original Star Wars movies are kind of funny. Princess Leia is funny. Is Luke Skywalker funny? Nah, not really. Luke might be the only one who's not really funny. Han Solo is hilarious. So is Chewbacca. R2-D2 and C-3PO are very, very funny. We like our heroes to be amusing, to kind of not take their situation too seriously, or to just make us laugh, break up the tension. That's always been Star Wars. That's always been Star Wars. He says, yeah, they are upset and opinionated. We're upset and opinionated about anything childlike. And then he points out really quickly that these movies are for children. George Lucas, are you honestly going to tell me that these two movies, which are essentially about a trade dispute, and you're going to tell me that these are aimed at kids alone? Certainly, I almost believe, I think I do believe this. I think I'll go ahead and say this. I think Jar Jar Binks was put in there for the kids, because you're fully aware that these movies are for you. You made these movies for you and your sensibilities as you age. Phantom Menace wasn't for kids. And Phantom Menace was very much a different movie, made by a different filmmaker than Star Wars: A New Hope. Star Wars: A New Hope was definitely for children, but it was for everyone. It was for everyone. I don't believe this thing. I don't believe this idea. This is a retreat. This is full retreat. It's cowardice to back away and say just because the audience that you were aiming for, which was clearly people who like science fiction, like fantasy, think like you do, you're because your feelings are hurt that they didn't like it, and your pride is wounded. You go into full retreat and say, no, this is for children. You're not fooling anyone. These movies, they certainly are for children too, but Star Wars has always been for all ages. 4-year-olds, I liked it when I was 4. I like it the same amount, for different reasons, now that I'm 43. It doesn't strike me as a child's film. It strikes me as a wonderful fantasy film. A nice bit of escapism. And The Phantom Menace should have too, and in fact, parts of it were. We just didn't like Jar Jar Binks, and Jar Jar Binks was, let's not get away from the interviewer's original point, an ethnic stereotype, kind of an offensive one, and you do litter your movies with them, George. You are going to have to come to terms with that at some point. And the way things are moving culturally, they'll come for you pretty soon. You might as well just kind of face it. But he says, yeah, these movies are for children, and they don't want to admit that. We don't want to admit that these Star Wars movies are for children. That's full retreat. That's cowardice. He says that we want no comedy in these movies. That's not true either. And then he hits us with the biggest lie of all. He said the first film, the fans absolutely hated C-3PO and R2-D2. I was there. I don't recall anyone ever, all through the 1980s, saying that they hated R2-D2 and C-3PO. Certainly, R2-D2 and C-3PO were kind of mascots of Star Wars. They weren't the characters that we wanted to be when we were pretending we were these characters when we were playing. They were a comic relief, but they actually served a purpose. They weren't just there getting in the way. C-3PO and R2-D2 in every single film served a purpose. R2-D2 was the very first plot device of Star Wars A New Hope, delivering the message from Princess Leia to Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was all about R2. The whole movie's about R2-D2, the first half of the movie, and his little mission. C-3PO being his friend, his guidance, his little companion. Nobody hated R2-D2 and C-3PO. We loved them. We loved R2-D2 and C-3PO. We don't find them annoying in a grating way. We just find C-3PO kind of whiny at times, but that's fun. That's who he is. I've never heard any adult complain about R2-D2 and C-3PO ever, but everyone, George, everyone complains about Jar Jar Binks. 2-year-olds, 92-year-olds all hate Jar Jar Binks. You created a bad character. To say that Jar Jar Binks is now getting accused of the same thing, that's the last thing that you say in this interview, is a sad bit of deflection. It's a sad bit of deflection. And again, I wish Star Wars was able to do this. I wish Lucasfilm was able to do this. It doesn't seem to be for some reason. It's a very strange phenomenon associated with Lucasfilm, that they're unable to just accept the fact that they made something that wasn't good, that didn't click, that fell short of expectations, or was just bad, or was just flat out bad. I wish that they would just accept that without blaming the fans, without having to call the fans names. That would be good. That would be good. But the idea of toxic fandom began right here, I believe, when it comes to Star Wars, right in this interview. George slides out of a question from the interviewer about whether or not he might have used an ethnic stereotype, and he turns it around to blame the fans that we don't like humor in our Star Wars films. Well, I didn't think Jar Jar was funny. I'm not sure the Jamaicans thought he was funny. I'm not sure that the Asians that you made fun of as Trade Federation representatives thought that was funny either, George. Yeah, sorry. I love you, buddy. I love you, but this was cowardice, pure cowardice. Hello, potential Indiegogo backers. Hello, friends. My name is Ethan Van Sciver. I'm a comic book creator who worked for 20 years for Marvel and DC Comics on books like Green Lantern, Flash, Superman, Batman, and X-Men. But before that, I had a comic book called Cyberfrog. Now, Cyberfrog lasted from 1993 to 1998, and then it stopped when I went to go work for DC Comics. Now I want to tell the story of where Cyberfrog has been for the last 20 years. I want to write, pencil, ink a book called Cyberfrog Blood Honey that tells the story of gigantic alien hornets that come to Earth and conquer it, sending Cyberfrog into deep hibernation, where he emerges now in the year 2018 into a completely alternate reality, a new world where these hornets have taken over, devastated humanity, using human skin to make gigantic wasp hives, and harvesting human blood to make honey to feed their young. Very few humans still exist. But it's up to Cyberfrog to save what's left of humanity and turn back the damage that's been done by these wasps with his brother Salamandroid and his friend Heather Swain. I want you to help me do this. We're going to get colors by Kyle Ritter. He's a fantastic colorist, and he's going to make this book sing. I'd like this to be a 48-page one-shot prestige format, part 1 of 4. So I'm asking you to help me launch the very first Cyberfrog Blood Honey epic graphic novel. Are you in? Will you help me? I hope so. Let's get this frog jumping again. Show your friends you support independent comics while showing the world who you back in the fight against the swarm with the brand new Cyberfrog t-shirt from Crypto Fashion and Comic Artist Pro Secret. Sizes come in small to 5XL, and take your choice of colors between navy blue, white, and black. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and order the Fandom Menace, Go Get Daddy's Belt, Tico, and Soilo t-shirts as well. Link is below in the description. You're gonna look great. People love these shirts. They fit wonderfully. Thank you very much. Hey, want to follow me on Twitter? Okay, cool. I'm at Ethan Van Sciver. Talk to you there.